Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. It is official. The Czech Republic's new government has taken office following the appointment of Andrej Babiš as prime minister by President Petr Pavel, marking a shift toward a nationalist Eurosceptic coalition. What's next for the country under the new government, and what does it mean for its neighbors and the rest of Europe? To discuss the implications, we are joined by Jiří Pehe, former advisor to Czech President Václav Havel. Thank you so much for joining me on World Talks.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening. So I would like to take a moment to begin with a soundbite from the new Czech Prime Minister for a good start.
It is clear that the European Union project is important. We actually have talks with the countries of the Western Balkans on Wednesday. I don't understand why the European Union has not long since resolved the issue of Schengen enlargement to include these countries so that we can defend our Europe at sea against smugglers who exploit these people, promising them a better life that never materializes and take their money. We have always fought for Europe's interest, and we are very sorry that the European Union is losing its competitiveness, that it is not addressing energy issues, that it is not addressing the internal market, that it is not addressing VAT or customs tax evasion, for example.
I need to say I found it interesting how Prime Minister Babiš called the bloc the European Union project. What do you think this and what he said in this soundbite says about his approach towards the EU?
Well, I think that his approach to the EU is very pragmatic. Mr. Babiš is a businessman, a billionaire. He views the European Union certainly as a good opportunity also for himself, not just for the Czech Republic, but at the same time, he is very pragmatic in the sense that he wants the European Union to be, above all, an entity that works economically and that delivers. So we will see how he will approach the European Union in his term now, because we know that during his first term, between 2017 and 2021, he was sometimes quite critical of the European Union. He was viewed as a close ally of Viktor Orbán. And although he says now that he is not in the same club with Viktor Orbán and the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, we have to wait and see.
Do you believe his words, that he's not in the same club as Orbán and Fico?
To some extent, I do believe his words because, as I said, Mr. Babiš is not ideologically driven. Also, the Czech Republic has cut itself from the supplies of Russian oil and gas. So we are not dependent on gas and oil from Russia, unlike Hungary and Slovakia. So Mr. Babiš has more space to maneuver, but at the same time, of course, he is like he wants to be seen on the European stage as someone who represents Central Europe. With the current allies, it will be quite difficult to do so and not to be viewed as a member of a club that is really not very helpful when it comes to the European Union's efforts, for example, to deal with Russia.
So the coalition that we're looking at is obviously the ANO party, but we also have the far-right SPD and the Motorist Party as well. What are the first changes that we're going to see be implemented by this coalition?
Well, the first session of the government working session will be tomorrow, and Mr. Babiš and his allies have advertised or have talked about the Czech Republic canceling or withdrawing from the European Migration Pact and from the ETS2 pact. That is something that, of course, is very problematic because one of the first steps, one of the first effects of this on the European stage may be that the European Commission will sue the Czech Republic, that country will be taken to the European Court of Justice because it unilaterally withdraws, or if it withdraws from from those European agreements. But at the same time, of course, as I said, Mr. Babiš is quite pragmatic, and although he is saying all of these things partly because of his allies, those two extreme right parties, he certainly doesn't want to be viewed as someone who goes against Brussels and against the European Union as a whole.
So you don't believe that we are running a risk of seeing Prime Minister Babiš being actually more radicalized in his policy choices by the proximity to far-right SPD as well as the Motorists?
I don't think that Babiš will be radicalized. Babiš will call the shots in this government, if only because his movement got 35% in the elections, whereas his allies got 7 or 8%, which of course means that those are relatively weak political parties and they cannot really dictate. The problem is complicated by the fact that for Mr. Babiš, that of course he needs these two parties not only to have a majority government, but also to vote in about a month. Not to extradite him to for a criminal in a criminal case that he's being charged in. So he right now he has immunity, but of course after that vote he could be in a way facing criminal prosecution. And one of the reasons why this coalition actually came into existence is the fact that he was able to persuade these two parties to vote against his extradition. So there's still a lot of instability, possibly because once Mr. Babiš is over this threshold, he may completely change the way he behaves. In the past, in the government, in between 2017 and 21, he was quite dominant. And at this point, he is still in a position when he can be extorted by these two smaller parties because of his problems with the criminal justice. But again, we have to wait and see how he handles this, and also how he handles his own conflict of interest, because at this point he is, according to the Czech law, he's in conflict of interest because he's a billionaire in charge of a large company, and in order to meet the requirements of the Czech law, he has to somehow find a way to distance himself from his companies.
Obviously, we cannot speak about the new Czech government coming into office without pointing in the direction of Ukraine and the situation taking place on the continent. And the big conversation right now is the use of frozen Russian assets that are mostly stored in the Belgian banks. What do you think is going to be the government's stance on use of these and providing a 140 billion euro loan for Ukraine?
Well, if I understand Mr. Babiš's position properly, he is not entirely against using the frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine, but at the same time he refuses the guarantees. That means that he doesn't want the Czech Republic to be a guarantor of this or its portion of this amount that would be given to Ukraine in case Russia goes to an international court and wins. So it will be interesting to see how he squares the circle, so to speak. He doesn't want to be seen as someone who blocks this, but at the same time, his policies are very Czech-centered, and he refuses to take any responsibility for financial commitments that could ensue or could happen if Russia at some point goes to an international court and wins the case against the European countries that gave the Russian frozen assets to Ukraine.
As an expert, as you look at the coalition, ANO, far-right SPD and the Motorists, do you think that this coalition is going to be stable? Or are we perhaps going to see in time to come some sort of a breakaway, so to speak, when it comes to that particular composition?
I don't think this coalition will be very stable. First, those two parties that Mr. Babiš has allied himself with are basically extreme right parties, especially the Freedom and Direct Democracy Party of Tomio Okamura. And he can expect all kinds of problems with their leaders. And at the same time, Mr. Babiš just a month ago or 6 weeks ago was talking about a minority government of his movement ANO as a preferred option. So I don't think he has entirely discarded this idea. I think that he is still playing with the possibility that once this vote about possibly extraditing him for criminal prosecution is over, and he has immunity for the next 4 years, that he could somehow reconstruct the government. At any rate, it will be an unstable project simply because we have three parties which are not really democratic. These are parties relying on very strong leaders who call all the shots within the parties. And there is a very little space for any kind of political accommodation, negotiations, compromises, especially with Mr. Babiš, who likes to call all the shots in the government. So I expect this government to be unstable, and I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't finish its term.
Thank you very much. That was Jiří Pehe, advisor to Czech President Václav Havel. Thank you for joining me on World Talks. I really appreciate that. And so this would be all for now. Thank you for joining me. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I really do hope to see you back here on TVP World in just a moment.